Bonjour Montréal. When I saw this video for the first time, I was amazed at what the young Thomas Julien had done. I was amazed how you can pick small pieces of information, in that case, Instagram pictures, which didn't mean anything by themselves, and how he's being able to create a story and show a reality from very different angles made by 852 people. And the relation I made is, what if our companies, what if you could do the same thing? Where are you getting your information? Where are the pieces that put together could show you a pattern to understand future trends, what your customers would want to do, or where your industry is heading? And this has been done in the past. I don't know if you remember this picture. It was taken after a Vancouver hockey game. In the middle of riots, a photographer captured this moment of this couple kissing in the street. And what happened after that was very, very interesting because everybody wanted to understand the picture. Everybody was looking for what they called the kissing couple. In fact, the CBC issued a tweet really a few minutes after that picture saying, "We're looking for this couple. Tell me the story about what is happening here. Who are those people? Why is this happening?" And what happened in a couple of minutes and hours after this tweet was posted was fascinating. What happened is medias around the world picked up the discussion. Everybody was wondering who that kissing couple was. And then information started flowing in. People started posting pictures in Facebook. So the conversation started in Twitter, moved to Facebook. It was going on in different discussion rooms around the world, lots of different places, same discussion. Someone posted a picture with a different angle and said, well, I was actually there, but I was standing at the parkade above that couple, and in fact, they don't seem to be kissing at all. She seems to be quite hurt. And then rumors started as well. People were wondering if the picture was staged. People were asking if it was a Coca-Cola commercial. Was it photoshopped? Until someone basically saw the picture and said, well, these are my cousins. They're young Australians. They're about to go back home. She was hurt, and he was just helping her. And I'm showing you this picture and saying, are your companies and are you tapping today into those pieces of information that are quite sparse and very difficult to put together, but social media tools today allow us to get that data and to basically look at the reality and make conclusions much more easily than what we could do before. And I want to talk to you today about unusual sources of information and really make you realize that never as before we can actually access very non-traditional sources of information to get better insights. What I'm going to show you now is how there's a company in Switzerland that is developing most of the future tastes and perfume the smell of perfumes that you will be wearing 5 or 10 years down the road. And one of the things they've been trying to do is figure out what you want to eat or how you want to smell 5 years from now. It's not an easy task. It's not published in any magazines and newspapers. And they found that the way they could figure out where those colors, those smells, and those tastes would be coming from was actually from street artists. What they figured out is there's a part of the population who are incredibly permeable to future trends. Younger generation, urban areas, especially suburban areas. So they've looked at 12 cities in the world which are blossoming in terms of art, street art, where there's a lot of young people, where it's very vibrant. And they basically have 14 people who go around the world and they take pictures of all the graffitis you see in the world. They analyze the pictures. They're looking at the symbols of what we see on those walls. They look at where the colors are coming from. They're speaking to the artist. And they're saying, if you're using this blue, how did you get the paint? Because, see, artists don't have any money. So if you give them the paint, they usually inherit paints nobody has been buying in the stores. They're not the paints that are going to be popular. But if they have the money and they bought the paint themselves, then they're picking colors they like best. And they go around the world and they look at those colors. And what happens is then all those street artists are basically shaping the way society will want to see things in the future. In fact, then it comes through to some companies. And Pantone, one of the key companies who's designing the colors you see on your walls, but also the clothes you'll be wearing. Anything you'll be seeing around you has decided this year that this is the color of the year, this light purple that we saw on the walls before. So the question is then of the company is to say, well, how do I translate this? What bridge do I build? And what does it mean? Purple. Which food will go with purple? Is it grape? Is it raspberry? Is it lavender? And basically figuring out the type of food we'll be eating in the future. And that's a source of information that I bet very few companies in your fields or in your company, they're not the typical sources of information you're using. You see that somewhere else. I live in Switzerland, so I've done a lot of work with the watch industry. The watch you're seeing here retails for about 300,000 Swiss francs. That's about 350,000 Canadian dollars. I've tried some that are worth $1 million. When you're selling products like this, you're not selling a watch, you're selling status, you're selling provocation. And the company was trying to figure out who would be the people who would embody and actually tell them what the trends would be about how they should market that product. So what did they do? They turned to rappers. And they found that musicians and other type of artists were actually also very good at picking signals from a particular type of customer they wanted to attract. And what happened in that case was very interesting because, in fact, you have a tool that exists. It's called Rap Genius. And what Rap Genius does, it looks at the lyrics of any song sung by hip-hop and rap artists. And in that case, the company is called Hublot, and you'll be able to search for which artist is actually mentioning your brand name in their songs. In fact, the tool even gives you a map telling you when in time your brand is picking up and which artist matches the best the types of attributes that your product is offering. Not a very traditional source of information again, but something that is coming up with the analytical tool next to it to be able to analyze it. So this is really the question I'm asking as well is, are you tapping into some of those countercultures? These are artists, but I could mention to you about a dozen other ways you can tap into information. So where are you getting that information? You're spending those 3 days here. It's a fantastic place to do it. But there are other places where you can do it as well. In fact, today, there's information everywhere. And what's happening is very, very encouraging if you know how to tap into that information. Let me give you an example here. What you're seeing here is an animation that was done in a city of Geneva. What we've done is acquired the information about the cell phone signals of everybody who was commuting during the day. You see the timeline at the bottom within Geneva. You see the lake in the center, and you can really see the flow of population going back and forth day after day. That information today can be acquired fairly easily. In fact, I posted this morning an article that just came out showing how 9 companies today share information far more than what we think Google and Facebook does. But that kind of data is also very useful because basically what you can do is you can sell it to the people who operate your garbage trucks so they don't get the truck stuck in the streets when commuters are trying to go to work. It works for postal office. It can be also used for delivery companies like FedEx or UPS to know when and how to map the route of what they're doing. It's called Ville Vivante. Another source of information that we found also can be very much used. We're all familiar with Google Earth. Not always updated, but you can buy satellite pictures now fairly easily. And recently, about a couple of years ago, UBS, the bank, was attacked because they were using those pictures. What they were doing was actually quite smart. They were taking pictures of Walmart parking lots. And we know in the retail industry, roughly, the average basket that a customer will buy at Walmart. So by counting the cars in the parking lot, they were able to predict exactly the revenue and the profit of Walmart before the official numbers will come up. When it hits the newspapers, it doesn't look very good, but it's a very legitimate source of information, and I think actually a very smart way to use something that exists today, add a bit of thinking, and get some insights that are quite valuable. This is happening as well. There's so much information in the open space today. What I'm showing you here is a site called Open Corporates. What you do with Open Corporates is the site pulls from government sources all information about incorporation documents of companies, and it creates a map where you're able to touch or search for any company, and you can try it for Canadian companies as well, and you can see where they have subsidiaries, particularly in which tax havens. And this is being used, and you can actually map out the very complex corporate structure of a company to understand where they're paying taxes and where they're avoiding taxes. By the way, I'll be putting on Twitter in the next few hours all the URLs, links to those sources as well. And this is called Open Corporate. So the transparency about company information, about people information, is unparalleled. And the question is whether is your company using something like that. Here's another example. What you're seeing here is a site that tells you real-time where an airplane is. You enter the flight number or the tail number, and it will tell you if your aircraft is actually arrived or if it's in the air. It's used when people are late flights and they want to check if their flight actually has left Vancouver when Air Canada is telling them so. But it can be twisted. What I've done here is I've searched for all the tail numbers of the helicopters and aircraft owned by BP. And during the oil crisis, when BP was saying that nothing was going on and it wasn't a big deal, I went online and I searched to see where the fleet of the company was positioned and where it was heading. And what you're seeing on this graph is a little Cessna that is basically leaving the west coast of the States. And all their fleet was basically converging to the Gulf. So you could really follow where corporate aircrafts or helicopters are actually going. It's useful to anticipate mergers. People in mining companies are using it to test where the helicopters of their competition is going to go for to get which sites are the most strategic for them. So information's everywhere. I love the Swiss. They're very secretive, but they have an application. It's called Car Index. It's available on your iPad. It allows you to enter the license plate of a car, and it will tell you who owns the car and where they live. Now, this is useful if someone is bumping into your car in the street, but you can walk into a head office parking lot. You can enter, and I've done it. I wasn't very proud of it, but I've done it. I walked to the Hewlett-Packard head office in Geneva. I entered all the plate numbers of cars parked in the parking lot, and you can know exactly who's visiting that company at that particular time, who they're hiring, who they're partnering with, client lists, and so on. All of those examples are just to illustrate how you cannot stop today by just looking at what newspapers and magazines are publishing. There's an immense amount of data available, and I'm an optimist, so I tend to think it would be crazy for companies not to use them, and sometimes you have to twist a little bit those tools to get insights about what is useful to you. And with a little imagination, really, you can turn data that doesn't seem like much, like an image on Instagram, into an image of a trend or a reality. Now, data is everywhere. You can pick it up, or you can ask for it. And I would just want to have a word here on crowdsourcing. You're familiar with the term now, but companies are now using it very smartly. For example, a few months ago, couldn't sleep, so naturally I opened my social media, I go on Twitter, and Virgin Atlantic was having a conversation. They were working with GE to reinvent the future of airlines. So they posted a tweet late at night that said, we just want to innovate. Our team can do well, but you, users of aircrafts and travelers, can tell us better, basically, what you want from an airline in the future. And what happens was fascinating. Within 2 hours, they had thousands of comments of people coming in and giving examples of how they would like to make an airline better. You know, we should have flights with pets. So anybody who's got a dog can just socialize and fly with their pet inside the cabin. We should have an SMS to tell you when your row is boarding instead of having to wait until you're called in a loudspeaker. We should be able to order food from any restaurant in town and have it delivered at the door. So when you get into the aircraft, you basically take your bag of food with you. Great ideas. 1 hour, no cost whatsoever. They used GE because they had a lot of followers to amplify the message. But it's a very smart way to engage customers into giving you information. And some companies are doing it today. The head of Procter & Gamble, the head of research for Procter & Gamble was saying that in 10 years, this is how market research will be done. So the question is, if you're not doing it today, who's learning about it in your organization? And other companies have done that. This is the site from Lego. I love Lego. I think it's one of the most creative companies in the world. They've got a site called Cusco, just changed name recently. And what they're doing, they're saying, please give us a model you'd like us to produce. Build anything you want in Lego, put it on the site, and the ones who get the most votes will get produced. In fact, I was thinking last night when I was preparing, it would be very interesting to submit a C2 Montreal Lego model, have all of you vote, and see if actually it gets produced. But the idea here, again, is not so much just to get models, but to get a sense of what's hot. I don't know if you see it here. One of the models that got produced after that was the Minecraft example, for example. And it helps you understand girls or boys, which generation, adults or kids, who are the people who are getting engaged with my brand. And again, you can really tap into that information like this. So basically, companies need to be a lot less competitive and a lot more intelligent about where they're getting their information. Similar to that, it's also about finding information from people who are not in your current circles. We all love networking, but what's difficult is to network with someone who's not from your field. How much can a banker learn from somebody who's in retail? How much can someone in pharma learn from Google? And how do you access those people with whom you don't have a direct connection? We love LinkedIn. These are close connections. What's important is the weak ties, is the person who your friend knows who's from a different field. And again, today, tools exist. This is one I'm using, which basically maps my LinkedIn and Twitter connections, creates for me a map, and shows me who do I know who knows other people who could be useful for a challenge I have or a question I'm asking. And again, tools exist today that are much more powerful than LinkedIn. This is my favorite tool. It's called Relsi. And Relsi is a New York company, ex-Bloomberg executive. He's hired analysts, mostly in India, who scan any published source of information and pictures about people. And they're putting together a list of those people and who they know. So if you're sitting on a board, if you're sitting in a committee, if you work for a company, if you've been seen at the cocktail last night with a glass of wine with someone else and somebody happened to have a picture of you and that person and mention it, it gets logged. And you are able to scan connections. So I'm a huge admirer of Mr. Yunus. So I've tried to say, how could I get to talk to him? And the tool, you can basically find the path. It will give you 100, 200 paths from you to a specific person. And it would color code whether those people know each other really well when it's red, or it will turn yellow when people know themselves less so. So you're able to basically tap into sources of information you don't have directly access to. It's a brilliant tool. The quote I'm giving you here, I have no idea who to reach out to, and it never occurred to me to do it. I took from the report that was leaked last week about the New York Times analysis of their digital strategy. Some of you might have read it. It's the most brilliant work I've seen in a long time about a company looking at itself and saying, we failed, and this is why we failed. And one of the quotes in that report is about people saying, I really had no idea I even needed to speak to those people. And this is a serendipity that you have in an event like this one, where you happen to be sitting next to someone, tracking a conversation, and that might be the best insight of the whole conference. But how do you make this happen in a company when you're at your desk, and are you teaching your employees to reach out beyond their circles? And if you don't do that, it can have quite tragic consequences. You know, I was shocked when last year, the Canada Post Office announced that in 5 years they would not be delivering mail anymore. What a lack of imagination. First, you could question, do people need to get their mail every day? Why don't you just send it once a week or once every 2 weeks and then make them pay if they want it more frequently? Are there other ways to deliver mail? I'm doing a lot of work with DHL. For years now, they've been testing the drones. And the idea of saying, we will have the packages shipped to a hub in a community, but then we need drones to deliver the last 50 meters. And if not drones, can we use retired people to basically pick up the packages and hand deliver it to their neighbors? There's lots of ways you can look at that. Now, the post office person is not someone who goes to Silicon Valley or to Google Singularity University and gets access to information about drones. So how do you create that link in a company so people are exposed to that? Another example of what's happening, you know, you follow the Uber taxi fight. In Europe, it's huge. You can't go to Paris these days. The taxis are always on strike. And they don't understand why you can actually switch to a model when you can call any regular car and you can basically have someone drive you anywhere. The sharing economy is not a new thing. It's been around for 10 years. How come it took 10 years to a taxi company to realize the impact it will have on its business? Last example, retail. This is the way a department store looked like 30 years ago. You'd go to the counter, you ask for the lady to give you the product, you pay, and then you live with it. And someone in the States said, let's challenge an assumption. Let's assume customers pick their own product and pay only when they leave. And the supermarket was born. And it hasn't changed in 60 years. So we wonder today why Target is in trouble in Canada. Part of the ways is nothing's being reinvented here. Yet, if you tap into other sources, you'll realize some people have. The picture you see here is a Tesco supermarket in Korea. It's not a supermarket. It's a picture of the supermarket. What Tesco has done, Tesco is the equivalent of Provigo or Loblaws in Canada. They've taken pictures of shelves people are very familiar to. And they've taken those pictures, they printed them on huge stickers, they've put them on walls in a subway. So when people wait for the metro, they go around with their cell phone, they scan the code of the product that they know well, it lands in their in-basket, and it gets delivered an hour later when they arrive home. I think it's brilliant. Again, yesterday I was reflecting, going through the hall and seeing all the work from the designers there. I'd love to buy some, but I don't want to be carrying the poster in the plane when I leave tonight for Geneva. Why couldn't you do the same thing and print on the walls the product, order them and have them delivered? So the assumption you're getting rid of here is the store. And how come people haven't thought about that? I think it's transforming waiting time into shopping time. I think it's brilliant. But how many people have done that? I know Jean Coutu has started in Canada a little bit. And this is the future of retail. How many of you have seen this product? 4. This is Dash. Dash was launched 2 weeks ago by Amazon. It's a stick. You carry it in your pocket. You open your fridge and you're missing milk. You scan the barcode and the milk lands in your basket. You see a product you like anywhere. You scan the code and automatically lands in your basket. You're seeing eggs. They don't have a code, a barcode. Well, you can just talk to the stick and you can say, I need eggs. And automatically the eggs land in your shopping basket. This is the future of retail. So think about all of you having brick and mortar, what this can do to a business. You can also scan the clothes of anybody you see in the street and decide to buy them on the spot. It's brilliant, it's simple, but are your companies exposed to those kinds of technologies? Because if you don't, then you're missing part of the richness, what's happening. And I think today, with the tools we have, there's absolutely no excuse for not spotting those things and to have those blind spots. So what do? I've got 4 pieces of advice. First one is ask yourself, who your canary is. The canary is used in mines to smell the gas before the mine explodes. They are very good at sensing very weak signals or traces of gas. So the question is, in your company or in your businesses, who's your canary? Who has a specific responsibility for spotting those weak signals that are everywhere and to basically find a way to amplify them and define what they need? And it's not just who's supposed to do it, what are the sources, is who's interpreting them. Now, what you're seeing here can look like a child's scribble. In fact, these are waves of a brain processing information. But if I'm not a scientist, I see this and I have no clue what it means. It's the same with weak signals in companies. Those will come through things you read and things you observe. But what's the process in a company to say this one actually matters? Because that dash stick could be the end of target. And therefore, we have to pay attention. So what process do you build in a company so this gets picked up and actually used? First piece of advice. Second piece is, there was a speaker yesterday who talked about the 3 T's. Time to think. I'd like to take it even beyond and say it's not so much time to think. It's thinking is too focused. It's time to stargaze, dreaming. When is the last time you took to just look at something, to just sit? You know, I see all of you at the break trying to find someone you know to have a discussion, or going to your smartphone because it's not very comfortable to be standing by yourself in a big hall. Well, sit down and just look around you, observe things, and build time for your employees to actually dream, watch the clouds, whatever it takes, but something that will allow them to have those ideas coming up. Lastly, think about the alien eye. The alien eye is the example of an alien sent to Earth and who's asked to report back on what Earth is about. And he comes back and he says, Earth is populated by automobiles. They have little slaves that drive them everywhere, and they spend their time socializing in big parking lot while the little slaves go to work to produce their food. And this concept of alien eye was developed by a futurist called Eddie Weiner, based in New York. And I love it. It's the ability to look at something you've always found normal and to say, maybe it's not. What does it mean? And it's not an easy thing to do. There are categories of people who do it very well. And people who actually always push. We're talking about thinking about out of the box, pushing the lines. I love this quote. The bottom line is that people don't know the lines. Well, again, this is coming from my New York Times document. And there are people who think very well about the lines. Kids, right? They frame things differently. So when's the last time you had a kid in your office? Are you spending time to reframe your questions? Are you getting your hands dirty? Are you coloring? Are you playing? When's the last time you actually had time to do this? And I would really encourage you to explore and play. I call it the sandbox kind of concept. And I hope you'll be able to push the lines of your business a little bit. Thank you very much.